Thank you, Vice Chancellor, and thank you for the opportunity to be here at USP. Dr. Ganesh Chan, Permanent Secretary, and staff from the Ministry of Finance, and I see a lot of familiar faces from USP and students. We've decided not to make PowerPoint presentations or give you some details of what we did in the last two budgets because we want a lot more from you. We've had some really fantastic discussions in the last 2 days with different groups. We don't want to do campaign-like meetings where we invite so many people and then we end up discussing a lot of other issues rather than the budget. So this year's format on consultation is slightly different. The last two budgets, the first budget when we came into government was largely a budget to set some basic foundations of governance, of budget formulation, of economic policies, as well as political directions that was different from what we saw in the last 15, 16 years before 2022. And for the education sector, and for the media, and for freedom generally, there were some first steps that we undertook. One was to bring the Vice Chancellor of the University of the South Pacific back to Fiji when he was deported by the previous government. Academic freedom was curtailed, and many other restrictions were in place. People couldn't talk about government. And we are very happy today that all those basic tenets of democracy, academic freedom, media freedom, people's ability to speak and criticize government, and we see a lot more of that. Of course, as governments, we're not always very pleased about what the media says about us, what people say about us, but that's what democracy is about. That's what noise in a democracy means. And we are very pleased about it. And I want to say this in a university because I myself experienced curtailment of academic freedom when we were in the university before I joined politics. And so those were some of the first things we did in 2023. In terms of the budget, we were landed with a debt level of about 90% of GDP. Forget about the nominal terms in which we express debt sometimes as well. But the most important expression used is debt to GDP ratio, and that was 90%. So we set out to put some foundations of economic policy that would stabilize our strategies, our economic policies for the future. And so we did some tax reform. We had reformed our VAT system. We had 3 rates, 0, 9 and 15. We got rid of 9. We kept the 0 on basic food items. We added 1 more. So 22 basic food items, including prescribed medicine, still has 0 VAT. And we moved away from 9 to 15. In fact, 15% VAT was there. When the coup happened in 2006, 2009, we had 20% devaluation. Cost of living was hitting the roof. And yet in 2011, they put 15% VAT. And it carried on until 2016, when it was reduced to 9%. And then in 2022, they went back to 3 rates. So by doing that rationalization, we were able to collect additional revenue. We reformed company tax, increased the tax from 20 to 25%. So as a package, we were able to raise additional $400 to $500 million. On top of that, so all that money, all that additional funding Apart from reducing deficit from as high as 7% down to 4.55%, we were able to put all those funding into the pockets of the people, into education, in health, increase in social welfare, writing off the $650 million debt that students had lended with, hardly anyone was paying, and replaced it with a very, very good merit-based scholarship. So all these rumors about people are going to lose things before the 2022 election was put to rest. In terms of the education budget, we increased it. And let me just say what happened with the TELS loan scheme that we had at that time. That was a disaster. People thought it was a scholarship. The gates were opened. There was no planning about the type of skills and courses in which students would go. So students who should have gone and become a good mechanic or engineer or a planner or a surveyor or a technician were sitting in lectures somewhere in the universities trying to do something else. And we lost $160 million worth of taxpayer funds on students who never completed their degrees and diplomas. And when we came in, there was hardly any record of those students. So we reformed that. We wrote off that $650 million debt on 53,000 families, and we replaced it with a merit-based scholarship. And more students are now getting scholarship. We have a number of different categories of scholarship, from academic programs, from medicine to engineering to accounting to teaching courses, right down to technical courses as offered by Polytech, FNU, and others. So if you wanted to become a joiner, you wanted to go to Montfort Boys Town, you get a scholarship. You get allowance paid. And all you have to do is to save the country after completing your degree with a bond. And that's a fair thing to do. So that's the reform we made within the education system for tertiary education scholarships. And now it's a much better programmed category of awards that students can choose from and still get a scholarship and graduate with it. So that was like a snapshot of 2023-2024 budget. And when we came to 2024-2025 budget, yes, the cost of living post-COVID was still very high. Freight cost has increased during COVID about 4 or 5 times. Came down a little bit, but not as much as it increased during COVID. And the effect of VAT was there from 9 to 15, but that has now tapered off. The inflation rate as of March 2025 was 1.4% as opposed to 4.6%. So we can see that the inflation rate has been coming down as well. Plus, the 22 basic food items still has zero VAT. We reduced duties on a number of food items, and we saw prices of some items go up. But we also realized that you couldn't control prices everywhere. So if the cost of goods that we are importing went up in Australia, New Zealand, US, China, freight cost went up, even if we had zero VAT, prices would go up. So we said in the 2024-2025 budget, let's address the income side. So apart from raising the minimum, when we came in, 1st of January 2023, minimum wage went up to $4. Last year, 1st of August, $4.50. 1st of April, it went to $5. Previously, in 16 years, the wages only went up by 68 cents, from $2 something to a particular level which was totally unacceptable. We increased the civil service pay between 7 to 15, 20%, right up to 20%. Different categories got different rates. And we saw that rise in the minimum wage also having a economy-wide effect of raising private sector salaries and wages. And that shows in the revenue that we are collecting now, that shows in the economic growth. Many people, even some of the banks, were predicting that the growth rate will be less than 2%. We had 3.8% growth in 2024. Tourism numbers were record for 2024. And so we are in a strong position. And as PS talked about the global uncertainty, it's probably one of the most uncertain times that we've seen in the global economic architecture after a long while. Although there is a pause of 90 days with respect to Trump tariff, the uncertainty it has created, the expectation of what's going to happen in the future actually is determining, economists know this better. The expectation of what happens in the future determines what people do today. So there is a bit of unsettling that's going on. The short and direct effect, in the short term, direct effect on Fiji, as far as we are concerned, as far as our analysis shows, is going to be minimal. Our trade represents about 5% of GDP with the US. The commodities that we export, such as Fiji water, kava drinkers will tell you that those who drink kava in the US, doesn't matter what happens to the price, they probably still consume. So we don't expect a drastic impact on the exports from Fiji to the US. But what could happen in the long run or in the medium term, if there is a global recession, if there is a slowdown, then through the various transmission mechanisms such as tourism, remittances, we could have some impact on it. But there is no cause for alarm or panic as far as Fiji is concerned. As I said, we are in a strong position. We see the US dollar rising as well in a crisis. That's always what happens. US dollar strengthens. That could have some impact on us. Our debt is denominated mostly in US dollars. Our imports are in US dollars. So that these are, but as I said, it's still a long shot in terms of what might be the final impact. Coming back to the next budget, yes, we recognize that there are areas where we could have done better, particularly in the area of implementation. And we are the first one to say that we are far from being a perfect government. So we are very mindful of how far we've gone and how far we still have to go. And we may not be able to do everything, but we want to put the foundations in a way that is sustainable, that future governments would be able to build on. And that's what we want to do in the next two budgets that we have. On higher education, on education in general, we've done, in fact, the reforms that happened over the last 15, 16 years until 2022 were haphazard. Changes were made, there were no analysis, no real diving in to see the impact on quality, on numeracy, literacy. And a lot of the changes that were made led to a complete disaster. The area of technical education, we had one of the best technical education programs, TVET programs in this country. From school, there was a pathway to FNU, to other institutions. That got destroyed. They set up technical colleges, didn't work. $30 million went down the drain. And we saw that in the effect of the labor market, the skills that we needed. So we are changing that scene. A lot of new players like Polytech. We are providing funding to every tertiary institution that is registered by the Higher Education Commission. And we are putting emphasis on quality of graduates as well. quality of technical training, and that's where our focus has been in the last two budgets. We provided significant amount of funding to support that. We have appointed an education commission, and we are hoping that the education commission will get down to work very soon, and they will have an opportunity, and many of you will have an opportunity to make submissions, make suggestions to the education commission as well. And part of the terms of reference is to look at what has happened over the last so many years, how we can, with evidence, change some of the things, reform some of the policies so that we can get better outcomes for our country, for our children, for our skill development, etc. So, one final point before I stop. We are going to be very particular about the budget that we provide to higher education institutions. We are going to assess those through various processes that are there with the Ministry of Education, with other agencies, with other ministries, and we want to support all of them. But we also want good quality graduates, good quality programs, and a process where there is transparency, accountability in terms of what educational institutions produce and what the employers and those that absorb these graduates are telling us. And some of the stories are not very good. I must say that, from some of the institutions and the feedback that we get from the employers. So thank you once again. I look forward to listening to you and would be happy to answer your questions. I think we have our senior staff here, Nimia Dawai, our head of budget, Munesh, head of fiscal policy, and of course PS. I always tell him I do the talking, he does the work. Thank you, Naka.